Hello everyone, welcome back to OCD Recovery's YouTube channel. Today I have a video that I basically pulled from a bunch of questions from people I talked to in the Facebook group or on the Instagram page and the YouTube channel. And what I've noticed is a lot of people are wondering about how to start disputing their core irrational beliefs or how REBT is used in OCD recovery and stuff like that. So today I'm going to talk about, and I have right here, you don't see me use my whiteboard, I always have a sheet over here now. Because like I said, the videos are a little bit more detailed, so I don't just talk without kind of a guide of what I want to talk about because I just lose track a little bit too easily. So what I'm going to talk about is why disputing your core fear is often needed in chronic OCD and in many other anxiety-based disorders such as PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and GAD, generalized anxiety disorder. And the first thing I want to talk about are, what is OCD? Okay, real quick, a little background. I've done a history video before, and I will be doing that. Before I go any further, if you could please subscribe down below. Great videos going up on the channel. A lot of new videos talking about exercises, about how to dispute your irrational beliefs, how to use other tools that people have used, the methods, REBT going to CBT, moving with uncertainty, exposures necessary, time and patience. So great stuff going on the channel, lots of free resources. As Rob said, new channels coming out, 10 new channels in 10 different languages. It's going to be really cool. So you're going to get to hear the things I say in basically other languages. And no, I will not be learning 10 languages. I barely speak English properly. So, what is OCD? Obsessive compulsive disorder. Now, when I did the history video, there are records dating thousands of years ago of people talking about OCD. Usually it was blasphemy OCD, because when you look at OCD, it likes to tag to the irrational beliefs that society holds at the time. Right now, what are people scared of the most? ROCD, POCD, things that society deems, very, very black and white, very black and white. You lose the one in the relationship, and then the way we see people, with the fears with POCD. So back in the day, way back in the day, the major treatment for OCD was phlebotomy. Now they believe that there was 4 humors, okay? I can't remember the colors of the humors, but I believe the one that was black, which is the dark humor, they believe that they took that out of you and did bloodletting. It would cure you of your OCD. Now this is what they knew at the time. Having OCD 2,000 years ago would have been pretty horrific because you probably wouldn't have met anyone with OCD, and you probably would have had no treatment, so you probably would have became an alcoholic. So now, these other anxiety-based disorders like post-traumatic stress disorder or GAD, now GAD is usually misdiagnosed 99 out of 100 times. If you come in to see someone and you're like, I'm anxious throughout the day, blah, 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 they'll just say, oh, you have GAD. That's not what GAD is. GAD, read At Last the Light by Paul David on the reading list and listen to Claire Weeks talk about in her book, Self-Help for Nerds, throughout her career. That is GAD. It is a disorder, a full-blown disorder where you have high moments of panic all throughout the day, sometimes hours at a time, nonstop, with no direct real fear unless you understand the fear of fear and the fear of anxiety and why it latches. PTSD can come on for a lot of people if you look at anecdote stories, and in the literature comes on very similar to OCD and the chronic light switch. One moment you didn't have chronic PTSD, and the next moment you did. Whatever that biological, environmental / cultural background on that pulls the genes. So as Brene Brown says, how does she say? Genetics loads the gun, but environment pulls the trigger. That's a great way to explain more than likely what's going on with anxiety-based disorders. So OCD in the future, from some of the stuff I read, might be classified as a different type of anxiety disorder in its entirety, more in the lines of compulsive spending and gambling and hoarders, but that's besides the point. So let's talk about some of the common misconceptions about disputing, because I do think it's very important to cover this. Oh my gosh, the best water ever. So some of the very basic stuff you hear is exposures are the only thing you need. And yes, ERP is the gold standard in the literature right now. It's important for everyone to do exposures. But we have to talk about that because exposures, anecdotally, we've seen thousands of people that it's not been enough. It's got them really far, and some people can get fully recovered from behavioral changes with exposures. That is a fact. Albert Ellis said a lot of people not talking about OCD, but a lot of people with phobias did benefit from just behavioral changes and not even so much disputing. Now, with chronic OCD, when the exposures, it's just cutting through. OCD will cut through like a hot knife with butter, just over and over, no matter how many exposures you do. And then there's the other part of that where your exposures can become compulsive. And no one really understands that too much, because I understand that because I chase a feeling. One of my friends had been seeing a therapist for 6 years, telling her therapist that she was chasing exposures, and that person said ERP cannot become compulsive. It's just a general lack of understanding with OCD. It's no one's fault. But somatic OCD, hyper-awareness, existential, false memory, real events, solipsism, some of these weird offsets of fears. Now remember, it's all just OCD. But these offset of fears don't have direct exposure. So if they don't have direct exposures, what do? Well, you got to look at the thing you're scared of the most, which is REBT, 1955, Albert Ellis, which I'll talk about in a couple of minutes, which came into CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, for somatic OCD, the improvements I made in 16 months, and the last 2 years ago when I was in a mental hospital, almost, 2 years ago in November, I'll be in a mental hospital. So, at the time, I just was living with it. I was going with uncertainty, nothing, didn't do anything. What people don't understand about hyper-awareness, the exposure is present. You don't need to go find it. You don't have to go finding your saliva or your breathing, your blinking. This doesn't mean that maybe sitting in bed and focusing on it 15 minutes a day might not be beneficial. There are times and places for things like this. I've heard people say that that's never what you want to do, and that's a black and white statement. I tend to stay away from those. And also, yes, it can work. Not for everyone, but it can be a tool that's used, but it's not going to get you recovered. You have to look at the core fear. What's the core fear? In somatic OCD, for an example, hyper-awareness, physical manifestations of anxiety. If I notice it forever, it's going to ruin my life. I'll never be able to focus on things again. I must focus. I need to enjoy life at all times. Remember, happiness is a moving target. Nobody enjoys life every second of every day, no matter what you see on Instagram. And all these different fears, the feeling of never having connection, solipsism OCD, the fear of rejection and judgment. Oliver is a great example. Worked on exposures at a huge clinic for a year, made awesome improvement. The people that helped him are absolute experts in what they do. They know a lot of stuff, but I don't think they might have understood fully about the REBT approach, which is why it gets a little bit of backlash, which is understandable. We're all willing to sit down and talk to people about experiences. So that's important. Now, one of the other things on why it doesn't unlatch and why disputing could be, more than likely needs to happen, what we've seen is you see a lot of people in the industry say that stuff like, people with OCD, they're the least likely to act on this. That is a reassurance garbage statement. If anyone's telling you, you're the least likely person to ever do that, that's not what you want to be doing. That's a very, very uneducated statement when it comes to OCD, and shows a very clear lack of understanding on reassurance. They might understand other things on graded exposures, how to get people to move towards contamination OCD or maybe harm OCD, the stuff that the people that usually call themselves experts understand a little bit more than other things. But reassurance is one of those things that really not many people understand because it's very sneaky. I just was talking to someone the other day and I said, addicts are very good at hiding that they're an addict. OCD sufferers are very good at asking for reassurance. If you don't understand reassurance inside and out, you will subconsciously give this person reassurance. Like, you would never do that. But what if you did do that? What if I am the one? It just doesn't work. Agreement versus acceptance. Agreement also, I would never do that. Doesn't work. And enforcing acceptance, which I've talked about in plenty of videos. I won't focus too much on that because I want to spend the remainder of the video, give a really good 9-minute introduction, 9-minute introduction to disputing the core fears and why it's often needed. 1955, we have a gentleman named Dr. Albert Ellis, who is a psychoanalyst, also did sex counseling therapy and stuff like that. So psychoanalysis, the Sigmund Freud method, psychodynamic therapy, looking into the past, thinking that the activating event, was the primary source of what got into the C, the emotional consequence, the chronic anxiety, guilt, depression, everything like that. No matter what anyone tells you, chronic guilt is caused by a belief, more than likely. It's not something that's outside your force. It's a belief you have. Let's talk about PTSD. That never should have happened. I should have never let that happen. Let's say something happened with a helicopter and overseas and it crashed. That belief you hold is why it's latched. Rob worked with a girl who was at the Ariana Grande bombing, severe PTSD for a year, went all the way back, went to her exposure, worked on her beliefs, sat front row at the concert, no anxiety. It's a belief system. I know people with PTSD. I've talked to them about that. They were like, I never even thought of that. It's just not well understood yet. It's getting better, which is awesome. That's why I love doing content like this. So he realized that looking into the past didn't make sense. 100 people get into a motor vehicle accident the same exact way. They don't all act the same way. Well, that can't mean that can't mean the accident, the activating event, your parents, the way they treated you. It's a little bit more difficult when you're 12, 13, 9 years old because it's really hard to grasp unconditional self-life and other acceptance. It's not impossible, but it's difficult because of the context of life. So that's a totally different topic. But for us, people I'm talking to right now, unconditional self-life, other acceptance. Now, that is unconditional. There is no condition where you can't accept. So let's say that someone, my profession, calls me a moron, or I'm an idiot, and then they threaten me. Before, 2 years ago, I would have freaked out, probably wanted to fight him. Anger, always caused by an irrational belief. Dr. Albert studied that for 70 years. He's shown that scientifically in the empirical data, anecdotally. The anger is the emotion, he said, that nobody wants to give up. There's a great how to control your anger before it controls you, which is a great Ellis book that I had to read, and that really, I didn't have to read it, but I wanted to. That helped change my perspectives tremendously, and it was a great thing. Rob probably didn't think I was going to, I guarantee he was like, oh man, this kid's got work to do with the anger beliefs, but I've come a long way. So, and moving with uncertainty too, but he realized that just moving with uncertainty or insight into your problem alone was more than likely not going to get you where you want to go. Don't get me wrong, insight into your problem is step one, realizing you have a problem. That's a great thing. Realizing your beliefs. Now, what are you going to do to change your beliefs? Now, you can work on the CBT part, the C, the cognitive, or the R, the rational emotive part. But if you don't work on the behavioral part and you still avoid, probably won't go to work too much. But that's just why we talk about this stuff, because it's important to look at that core fear, but also change the belief system. Now, usually with GAD and PTSD, because of we'll talk about GAD specifically, because of the very uncomfortable physical manifestations. It's usually fear of being stuck forever, fear of discomfort, and then going about realizing that even if you were chronically anxious forever, it's not the end of the world. I'm not saying it's comfortable, but it's not the end of the world. So underneath our perspectives are our beliefs. Our OCD, I can't stand not knowing what they're doing at work. POCD, I can't stand walking by a school. Existential OCD. I must know what happens after death. These musts, shoulds, and oughts, that I can't stand it, the catastrophizing, it's all a belief system. I always tell people, when you were younger, you believed in Santa Claus. If you believed in Santa Claus. And you believed in him. And you didn't have to ask yourself, do I believe in Santa Claus? Is Santa Claus here? You believed in him. It was a belief. And then one day, you didn't believe in Santa Claus anymore, because you realized he wasn't real. That's a very crude example to show you how our beliefs dictate. And the car accident one is perfect. Take 100 people, they get into a motor vehicle accident, same exact way, same time of day, same intersection. Maybe 9 of them will say to themselves, oh my gosh, I drive for a living like myself. I'm done, my life is over. Maybe 4 people say, yeah, new car, baby, from that insurance. They're happy. Maybe 40 people are, they're frustrated, but they're like, it's not the end of the world. No one's hurt. Maybe another 20 people are just freaking out mad. They're like, how dare you crash into me? That's your fault. I must prove you wrong. It goes to show you the belief you hold right now is the primary driver of the emotional consequence. And I'm going to tell you why, very simply. It's not a simple process, but it's not rocket science, why it doesn't stick with a lot of people. It doesn't just happen overnight. It's that simple. What do you mean, Nick? Well, in order to believe something, there's an environmental background, a cultural background, your perspectives. Sam Harris talks about how there's no such thing as free will. I think I would have loved to have a conversation. I agree. The stuff you say right now in the moment is probably your answer from your conditioned past. But now, trying to change your conditioning, your believing, your beliefs, your perspectives in the future could potentially change your belief systems in the future. So it's like a cool topic I like to think about. Like, well, are you changing your free will in the future? It's a really cool topic to think about and a great exposure for existential OCD and a great exposure for uncertainty. But it takes time and practice to unwind the beliefs. This is another thing real quick. Nobody that I've met that has chronic OCD has one thing going on. Oh, it's infiltrated everywhere. I talk to people about this all the time. It's infiltrated the way you think in many ways. Avoidance behaviors you don't even think are avoidance behaviors. This is why deadlines are asinine and stupid. It might take you a year, not everyone. It might take you a year. It might take you 2 years to fully even realize what Momin said to me. He probably doesn't remember this a while ago. He was like, it took me like almost a year to realize even all my compulsive behaviors while making great progress. Still making great progress, but it took him that long. It took me very recently to realize just how much I was agreeing with my thoughts in certain fears. Not the somatic fears, but other ones, body dysmorphia stuff and stuff like that. So it's a process. It's not something you can force. You can't walk around all day. Now, I've done videos talking about how to go about disputing. You can watch that in other videos. It's like a homework assignment. In the beginning, you got to have balance. You don't want to walk around all day disputing compulsively because anything can become compulsive. Now, there's more than likely no such thing as CBT didn't work for me. You've heard REBT, CBT didn't work for me. And just so you know, REBT is the precursor to CBT. Okay? And people say that, CBT was bad for me or it didn't work for me. More than likely because it wasn't properly given to them or explained properly. And they tried to force it. They tried to use it as a tool. When I tell people all the time, Nick, what's the best thing to do during a panic attack? Nothing. Not sit down and do nothing, but nothing. Go about your day and if it brings you to the ground. I just was talking to someone recently, have that panic attack. Fall down the street. Let everyone look at you, think you're crazy. Get up and go about your day. You could still do that. Let it bring you to your knees if it has to. Let yourself sweat, heart palpitations. You don't want to do anything. Now, because when you try, you're just constantly compulsively disputing in the moment, you're telling your brain you can't handle it and you want to get out of it. So it's a balanced tool that will probably take you a lot of trial and error to get it, to start actually being able to adopt it. That's why it gets bashed so much, because a lot of people it's not overnight. Listen, you're talking to someone that needed a lot of work on balance and patience. A lot. I'm an A-type guy to the max. Let's go, baby. But I had to realize that was not in my best interest in OCD recovery. So it took some time and practice. What do we got, 17 minutes? So basically, a little recap of what we talked about. Disputing the core fear really gets underneath the belief. Activating event, belief, consequence. Activating event, getting OCD, how your parents treated you, the accident you got into for PTSD is not the primary driver of the consequence. It plays a part. It plays a bigger part in certain people. You have to understand that. It's not so black and white. Someone that saw something real crazy overseas can't just be like, well, that doesn't matter at all. It's all your belief. They're like, yes, it does. I just saw this crazy-ass thing happen every single day for 3 years when I was in Iraq. So it does matter, but it's graded. It's different for everyone. But the belief system we hold currently is the primary driver. And I'm going to give you the final example before I get off. It's my favorite one if you've heard me talk about it. You're on a train station, right? You're waiting for a train. Getting poked in the back. You're like, I'm going to freak out. I'm going to freak out. You get so mad, the irrational belief, they must not do that. Turn around, he's blind. Instantly you say, oh, crap. I'm so sorry. The situation didn't change. He's still poking you with the stick. Your belief changed in the moment. Now, it's not that easy for OCD to change in the moment, but that's the idea. Thank you so much for watching this. And I knew this one was going to be a little longer, but it was definitely a much needed video. A lot of people ask me about acceptance. I'll be doing lots of videos on tools for acceptance, how to apply it, how not to apply it. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe down below. And I got a haircut because my wife told me I needed a haircut. I wanted to grow dreads out, but she didn't want me to. Never going to happen. So have a good one.